The Paranormal Network invites you to accompany us on a new journey, where we'll take you inside some of the most compelling and mysterious close encounters ever recorded. We'll examine the evidence, we'll listen to witnesses, we'll consider every possibility. Join us as we investigate history's most infamous UFO incidents. There are some monsters that need no introduction. Bigfoot, Nessie, the Jersey Devil, the Mothman, but there are plenty of more out there that may not ring a bell unless you live in the vicinity. Most likely every country in the world has one legend or another residing within it, and the United States might have more than any other. Point at any state on the map, you're likely to discover it has its share of local legends. One state that has a couple is West Virginia, home of the aforementioned Mothman, a frightening creature that reportedly terrorized residents of Point Pleasant in the late 60s. But before the Mothman made his presence known in the state, another even more bizarre figure made headlines there, thanks to a handful of genuinely disturbing encounters. Its name changes depending on who you ask, but for the most part, its name is the Flatwoods Monster. What makes the monster stand apart from its more infamous brethren? Well, unlike Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, and the rest, the Flatwoods Monster, if it indeed existed, didn't spring forth from planet Earth. This is one legend that isn't exactly local. The Flatwoods Monster came from a long ways away. Let me take this opportunity to thank you all for watching UFO Incidents and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now. Like this video and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. Now, back to the show. Our story takes place naturally in Flatwoods, a small town in the hills of Braxton County, West Virginia, where the countryside is lovely during the day and increasingly foreboding as night approaches. It's September 1952. The summer is coming to a close, and two brothers, Ed and Fred May, are playing football with their friends at a local school's playground. It's about 8 p.m. Suddenly, the boys spot a fiery object streak across the sky, something that is clearly not a plane or some other recognizable mode of transport. What the boys would later say is that instead of crashing, the object, which was approximately the size of a house, paused for a moment, then descended beyond the other side of a nearby ridge. The boys, being boys, decided they had to investigate. Making their way up the road to the hill where the object set down, the group first stopped at the May residence, where they picked up Fred and Ed's mother, Kathleen, and a distant cousin who was visiting. The now larger group, which also included 17-year-old Nation Guardsman Eugene Lemon, walked up the road while the boys excitedly told Mrs. May what they saw. The object had landed in what was then known as Bailey Fisher Farm, and the group could see the thing's bright red glow as they approached. Accompanying the glow was an eerie mist that seemed to come out of nowhere, along with a rather distinct smell that some of the group would later say made them nauseous. The object was protruding out of the ground. It was shaped like the ace of spades, with its nose embedded in the earth. One account has it that the group had brought Eugene Lemon's dog with them, and the dog, evidently sensing something uneasy in the air, ran through the mist towards the object, let out a howl, and then tore off back down the hill. It's likely that the others would soon wish that they had followed suit. One of the boys noticed something near a large oak tree some 20 feet or so away. The oak was tall and stood alone on the hill, and next to the tree, floating, was a figure. Larger than a normal-sized man with a round red face and wearing some kind of metallic hood, the thing was described as being anywhere from 10 to 15 feet tall. It had glowing orange eyes, inhuman eyes. It rotated right to left as it levitated off the ground, had some kind of bulky bottom, almost like a solid dress, and had claw-like hands that extended front of it. For certain, this was no man. Eugene Lemon had a flashlight and pointed it at the strange visitor, and as soon as he did, the group saw the thing light up. And to quote Kathleen May, it lit up like a Christmas tree. and it made a strange hissing sound like the bacon on a frying pan before it started coming toward them. Lemon panicked, dropped the flashlight, and much like his dog before him, took off running down the hill. Unsurprisingly, the rest of the group followed. The entire incident only took a handful of seconds, and Kathleen later said she wished she had never seen the hideous thing. But was it a creature at all? Both May brothers would later say that the thing's bottom half looked mechanical like the lower half of a V-2 rocket. One of the brothers believed that the eyes weren't eyes at all, but portholes like on a ship with a light emanating from within. He would later venture a guess that the thing was a sentinel, a guard, or lookout for something else, maybe something that was still in the crashed ship. That night, May and Lemon reported the incident to the sheriff, who went to the spot of the encounter and saw nothing. But witnesses who saw the May brothers and the rest of their party said the group was clearly frightened. This was no hoax or elaborate prank. Whatever it was that they had seen up in the hills had scared the hell out of them. And perhaps further to lend credence to that, the next day the National Guard was dispatched to have a look at the site, hoping to find evidence of something extraordinary. And this wasn't the last time the monster would be glimpsed. The new mysterious phantom would soon make an impression on a few new, uncompletely related bystanders. The next day, word had gotten out about the group's bizarre expedition into the hills of Flatwoods. Dozens of people came to the May house, and even more went up to where the scene of the encounter had occurred. Many accounts contend that there was, quote, a pressed down area of the field about 20 feet in circumference where it looked like something had been sitting, while others saw what looked like strange tracks or path marks in the ground. There was evidence of some kind of oil left behind from whatever had been there, as well as lingering odor, a sulfur smell that wouldn't go away. The National Guard came calling. Led by Captain Dale Leavitt, 2 squads of men were dispersed. One went to Bailey Fisher Farm, where the incident occurred, while others roamed the bottom of the hill, searching for whatever evidence they could find. Leavitt himself found small bits of what was described as metal fragments, as well as black plastic-like material in the grass on the site. He would say later that he never knew what the material was. He also said that the smell of the ground was indeed that of burnt sulfur. The National Guard collected plenty of samples and sent them to the Pentagon. Not your run-of-the-mill visit. While hundreds of eyes were on Bailey Fisher Farm throughout that day, another very ominous occurrence involving the monster was about to occur in a town fittingly called Strange Creek, which lies about 20 miles south of Flatwoods. George and Edith Snikowski, along with their infant son, were traveling the barren back roads of Strange Creek at night when their car suddenly died. George got out to haggle with the engine but found no luck in getting it working. The husband and wife started noticing a very foul odor emitting from parts unknown. George at first thought it was the engine on fire, but it wasn't. Then a strange light made an appearance nearby in the woods next to the road. George walked forward to investigate and saw a glowing object in the woods, and although at that moment he started feeling violently ill and decided to turn back to the car, even needing to rest against a tree for just a moment. As he walked back toward his wife and son, Edith let out a scream. George turned around to glimpse what it was that frightened her so badly, and he saw it. A towering creature, one without legs, seemingly levitating and coming towards them. Panicked, George got into the car, gathered his wife and son, and huddled on the floor of the vehicle, presumably praying it wouldn't enter right behind him. It didn't. And the Snikowskis lived to tell the tale. Their description of the monster differed, however, from the Flatwoods group. This creature did indeed have the solid bottom half that the May brothers and the rest saw, but no strange dome-like head covering or glowing eyes. Instead, it had vaguely reptilian features, and it apparently glided one scaly claw on the hood of the car before departing. Yes, this one had claws as well. One might wonder if this was the same monster the Flatwood folks saw, just without its protective armor. Perhaps it was another sentry. Either way, the creepy visitor clearly didn't intend on harming any of the people it came into contact with. It must have come in peace. And fascinatingly, these are really the only accounts of this creature that are on record, although there was a slightly similar encounter in the town of Heaters, not far away, where a woman reported seeing a ball of fire and the silhouette of what she thought was a man. Two encounters, one day and miles apart, before the age of instant access to news and current events, where otherwise normal people met up with a hovering giant, a thing unknown to rational minds. It is perhaps telling that the Flatwoods Monster, unlike, say, Bigfoot or Nessie, isn't constantly being seen by tourists or curiosity seekers. It was essentially just a brief period of time. If it was indeed a visitor from elsewhere, perhaps it got a whiff of our planet and decided to hightail it to somewhere else, somewhere where the inhabitants don't scream and run away so quickly. The National Guard was not the only Flatwoods official visit in the days after the incident on the Bailey Fisher farm. Kathleen May was visited by two men who claimed to be reporters from Clarksburg, West Virginia. They wanted to be taken to the site of the crash to do some sniffing around. Kathleen and Fred took them to the spot where the so-called reporters investigated the immediate area. One of them left following the direction in which those path marks were pointed, and according to Kathleen, about 30 minutes later, he re-emerged, covered in that mysterious oil. The man said to his partner, "Now what do you think Ed's going to think of this when we send these in for analysis?" A strange thing for a reporter to say. They left, but apparently came back a few days later and admitted they actually worked in D.C. for the government. They had posed as reporters to gain Mrs. May's trust. They also collected a sample of oil from her uniform, the one she wore the night of the monster encounter. The oil was clearly something of interest for the government. Kathleen May heard from the government again sometime later, this time in the form of an official letter, which explained that the thing that crashed in the farm was an experimental rocket, nothing more. May recounted that the letter ended with a warning to keep quiet about the incident, and that's something consistent in most of these cases, isn't it? May ended up going on a TV program called We the People with an artist's rendering of the being she encountered. This sketch is still the one to beat when it comes to what the group apparently saw that fateful night. It's worth noting that all the boys, when asked independently to draw what they saw immediately after the event, came up with similar sketches of the being. The local reporter said the group's stories never varied, never wavered. They all saw the same exact thing. It's worth underlining that, the one TV program aside, the Bays never sought to make a fortune off their encounter, never wanted to become celebrities. Didn't ask for this to happen. They didn't care whether people believed them, and while of course they didn't want to be ridiculed for their story, they stuck by it all throughout the years. Even as senior citizens, the May brothers have said they're unfazed by doubters. Naturally, there are skeptics. There always are after a paranormal encounter, especially one as strange as this. The obvious theory is that a meteor shower caused the confusion. The boys simply saw a meteor fragment hit the valley, and the reddish glow they saw in the woods was an airplane beacon. Some of the people think the bright eyes near that oak tree belonged to a large barn owl. Same goes for the hissing sound and those large claws, but would a group of 6 or 7 people not know an owl when they saw one? Would every one of them describe a mechanical monster coming at them when it was just a bird? When George Snikowski huddled with his family in his broken down car, was he afraid an owl was going to come in? In the years since, this creature has been called many things. The Flatwoods Monster, the Phantom of the Flatwoods, the Green Monster, the Braxton County Monster, and most affectionately, Braxy. Braxy is big business now in the Flatwoods. The town has long embraced its infamy, with many a store devoted to capitalizing off the creature's singular visage. Most likely, some folks out there still look up at the night sky every once in a while, wondering if it was all a strange misunderstanding, some kind of elaborate ruse, or if their own town was visited by a thing from another world, if only all too briefly. Perhaps we'll never know for sure, but we like to think Braxy, the Flatwoods Monster, is still out there somewhere. We'll keep looking for the answers, as long as you do too. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We plan to delve further into history's most important UFO incidents.
Inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Russia has